Bonjour, mi amigos, or something like that. It's summertime, which best time of the year. I don't really care what anyone says. Like, sorry, but fuck cold weather. I'm not about that. But because it's summertime, you know what that means? It means summer movie season. But because there's also no good movies coming out, so I decided to do something different. I've kind of decided that every now, once in a while, I'm not going to stick to a consistent schedule, but what I want to do is I want to do kind of something like a talk show, kind of, but not a talk show. I guess more like an open conversation. Let's pitch an idea kind of thing, something like that. Except we'll do it for movies, maybe even video games. We don't know. We'll see how this does. Although I have a feeling the let's pitch a whatever, I feel like that's a genre that's already been kind of taken over. So I think I'll just call this video "Let's Make a Movie" or whatever, whatever, and then we'll come up with the plot of that. You know what I mean? As long as it is consistent. But when it comes to like coming up with ideas for movies, like especially for summertime films, given oddly enough the two best performing films in the box office right now at this time are YouTube made horror films, because let's be real, like screw Halloween, horror movies are good any time of the year, but they're really good during the summertime. So what do we do? Well, unironically, earlier today somebody asked me if I could make a movie about anything, what would I do? And initially I said something about that. I feel like if there's something that doesn't ever get done properly, it's usually film adaptations of video games, which don't exactly have the best track record until really kind of recently with like, the Sonic the Hedgehog movies are okay, though Sonic's not really my thing. And I guess kids really did like the Super Mario Brothers movie. I don't know. I think I've watched the first one once and then I never really cared after that. But I got to thinking, there is another Resident Evil movie coming out, if you want to call it that. I mean, maybe the trailers are a little misleading, but then again, the director of this movie also said that it's going to have nothing to do with the games or anything like that, which at that point, why are you making a Resident Evil movie? So I thought, okay, well, what's a good example of a video game series that could stand to not only probably get a movie adaptation, but actually do it correctly? And that's what I want to focus on. And spoiler alert, it's zombies, not Call of Duty. What I want to do is pitch a film idea for a game series that, a little humble game series that you've probably all have heard of, maybe, if you're cool. I'm kidding. A game that really revolutionized the zombie subgenre, especially at a time when it was starting to become rather stale. And what I'm talking about is a little series that came from a Polish studio. You might have heard of them, called Techland. And that franchise is Dying Light. So let's pitch a movie. Now, the question is how do we do it? Because, how do you separate a film adaptation of Dying Light compared to other, film adaptations of, zombie-based video games like, Resident Evil or Dead Rising or something. Well, I don't think Dead Rising ever got a movie, although I think it's supposed to. Don't quote me on that. Or, TV show adaptations of comic books of zombies, like, Robert Kirkman's The Walking Dead. Or, well, how do you distinguish it from really just any kind of zombie movie? How do you do something like that that makes it different from everything else? And that's why I would want to preface this by sticking true to the games themselves. I'm taking my damn sunglasses off. That they don't look cool. What I would want to do is to do the whole film in POV. Because to those of you watching at home who have no idea what Dying Light is a zombie survival horror series made by Polish game studio Techland, and their whole shtick is what separated from them. By the way, these are the same guys that created Dead Island and Dead Island Riptide. But due to creative differences with their publisher Deep Silver, they weren't able to make the games they wanted to. Well, so they decided to strike it out solo, and instead of working with other developers, they decided to try to do something different and on their own. Thus, they kind of took what they did with Dead Island and Dead Island Riptide, and they created Dying Light, which is first-person survival horror, but with parkour, which, funnily enough, really wasn't anything that anyone had done before. Like, yeah, it had an intricate, very intricate crafting system and everything like that. You know, it has your hack and slash kind of combat, while also, you know, you have your guns and stuff like that, but this game put an emphasis on, like, environmental traversal, where you can literally, like, escape the hordes of infected. I don't want to call them undead, even though the games call them undead. They do systematically kind of showcase to you that the zombies of Dying Light aren't actually reanimated corpses so much as they are just infected peoples who cannot be, there's no cure for it. Like, it's like getting rabies. Like, you're not dead, but you're also not you anymore. Although rabies doesn't actually affect humans that way. You just die. Badly. But I feel like to stay true to nature for a film adaptation of these games, what I would want to do is film the entire film in, like, POV. And I think that's more than well, I actually do firmly believe that's actually fairly possible. Because really, for the first movie, I would just do a film retelling of the first Dying Light. But I'm sure somebody who's played the games is probably going to think, well, I don't know, buddy, like, the first Dying Light didn't exactly really have much in regards to a story. It had a story, but there are some people out there who would tell you it's shit. And to be fair, there's a good reason for that, because you have to understand Techland is a Polish studio. Ergo, when it comes to storytelling, and this is something that, by the way, they themselves have admitted, they only know how to tell stories from the Polish perspective. Like, the Polish have their own way of telling stories. I have a very good friend of mine, her husband is from Poland, and even he's backed this up. But as it's been explained to me, it sounds like the Polish have a very, very weird way of trying to tell stories. So, in other words, what Techland was trying to do with the first Dying Light is that they were trying to tell a story to Americans a way that Americans could understand. Which, hell yeah, to them, you know, for them trying to appease an American audience, screw you, Europe. But I feel like that's where, for a movie like this is where you would have to find yourself a decent enough screenwriter to kind of take the story that the game tells, and then you go through and you iron out, like, because I don't think Dying Light had a dog shit story. I think that like I always found that the story was engaging enough to me, and from what I've seen from like gaming forums and stuff like that, I'm not the only one who thinks this way. So I feel like the story's there. I mean, there is a story there, and it's a very interesting story, and I feel like it's engaging enough to keep you moving forward in a way that you can kind of tell a way more, make it a little bit more engaging without really changing anything. It's really, I think, about how you write it and how you execute it. Because it's a movie, and you're going to have, a cast and everything. And even though it's told from a POV, I feel like you can take characters from the games and make them a little bit more prominent in the films. Characters like Brecken or, Jade or Raheem. And as well as for enemy characters like Rice or his second command, Tahir is a really good example. Like, really, all you just have to do is take, like, I mean, yeah, there's have to be a lot of stuff you have to cut out of the game and everything like that, but like, from the game that you would have to cut in order to condense it into because I'm thinking for a movie like this, there's no reason this movie should be more than 2 hours. Because let's be real, like, what a lot of us who've played Dying Light, what do we spend a lot of our time doing? It's hacking and clobbering zombies. Like, it's butchering the infected. Like, let's be honest with ourselves, folks. When you play Dying Light, that's what you're going to be spending the majority of your time doing. And I feel like you can still have that element, by the way, without, spending too much time. But like, you would also have to be a little bit more realistic within the framework of the film in terms of contrasting it from the game. I feel like what you would have to do is, because like I would make the protagonist Kyle Crane for sure, and I can already tell you who I'd cast. Like, I would cast anyone who looks like the character to play him. But because the film is being told entirely from a point of view perspective, I would probably try to get Roger Craig Smith to actually voice the character. Which, at the end of the day, it's going to be fundamentally just Roger Craig Smith literally voicing lines from the first game. And that's okay, because let's be real, Roger made Kyle a very human and very relatable character. Hashtag Kyle Crane is best boy. I love Aiden Caldwell in Dying Light 2, don't get me wrong, but Kyle's the GOAT. Sorry. I feel like, by doing that, you can nerf it a little bit and everything like that. You nerf him a little bit. And by having it put into that POV perspective, which is, like I said, and if there is a zombie movie or series that's ever been done from a POV perspective, which the only thing I can ever think of that I've ever seen was the zombie skit from one of the VHS movies. It's actually that really, really sad one with the Asian guy on a bicycle where he gets attacked by a woman who's infected, and then, but it's all, you see everything from his GoPro on his bike helmet or whatever, and systematically you see him kind of gain self-awareness, and eventually he ends up actually like deleting his life subscription himself because he gains that much self-awareness. It's actually really fucking sad. But that's, other than that, to date, that's really the only thing I can ever think of that's ever done zombies and POV outside of video games. But I feel like by doing, having the film being done from a POV perspective and having that parkour element and everything like that, I feel like you would be you're having the audience, the viewer, watching the film through the protagonist's eyes not unlike those of us who played Dying Light for the first time, because more notably, because I feel like that would add a sense of claustrophobia or an anxiety when you stop and think about it. Because imagine, like, you're watching the film and you're seeing it through Kyle's eyes, and you're running, he's running down a thing and he turns a corner. He's, maybe he gets cut off, he's in a dead end kind of, so he only has to go forward, and he's running down a corridor or something, and he goes to turn, and then bam, there's a horde right there. And it's like, it's in your face, so the audience, members of the audience, see that through his eyes, and you can only imagine. And it's one of those things where it's not just a jump scare, but then yeah, you get that jump scare element, which is what all modern horror ever does anyway. But then you get that kind of suspense of, like, they're in his face, they're right there, how the hell is he going to get out of this? But more notably, for those of you, again, watching this, who've never played Dying Light, who have no idea it is, I think those of you who've played the games, you know where I'm going about, because it's isn't just about regular zombies. It's not about, like, because guess what happens when the sun goes down? We all remember our first night run, don't we, boys? And we all remember our first night run, and more notably, we remember the absolute asshole clench, tighter than a submarine portal feeling of anxiety we had when we're literally running down a street and you make the mistake of pressing the wrong button to look behind you as you're running to see 3 or 4 volatiles up your ass, literally ready to clamp down on them booty cheeks. We all remember it. Just like we all remember when we tried and died attempting to fight and kill a volatile for the first time, and well, we all know how that ended. It feels bad, man. And I feel like you're not going to capture that kind of suspense. You're not going to capture that kind of anxious feeling of fear through something filmed like any other zombie media or any kind of horror media for that matter. I feel like filming a Dying Light movie in an absolute POV is a necessity. You have to make this movie that way. If you try to do it any other way, you're gonna wait. You're not going to do anything exceptional. And the reason why I argue of why you can most certainly do this is because by doing this movie in a POV like perspective, you have this ability to, not, like I said, not only to capture the, like, fear and moments of claustrophobia, but also kind of like, that differential, right? Like I said, the parkour and the free running is what made Dying Light very exceptional and unique. Because, like, what could be cooler than, seeing a character literally, like, seeing the protagonist getting chased by a pack of, say, virals, which those of you who've never played the games the viral is people who just recently turned. So you have the biter, who is like the typical shambling, slow-moving zombie that by themselves ain't really jack shit unless you have a horde of them, and then that's a different ball game in and of itself. Virals are kind of like the zombies from, like, the Zack Snyder remake of Dawn of the Dead, where they actually run and chase you, and they can climb up buildings and pursue you. So, like, you really got to be hauling ass when doing parkour to get away from them, or you stand your ground and kill them. By the way, I mentioned volatiles earlier. Again, people who, well, if you The volatile is something you have to see rather than explain. We'll just say the volatile is the apex predator that rules the night. We'll leave it at that. The non-initiative, you can look that up at your own discretion. But I feel like doing this film is a must in POV, and the reason why is it can be done because, one, you're saving on budget while staying true to the games that are obviously would be the reason for why this movie would get made. But most notably, the reason why I feel like this can be done, apart from those things, is something like this has been done before. It just wasn't a horror movie. And that was a little film that I feel like is so criminally underrated because I don't really ever hear anyone talk about it. And that movie was Hardcore Henry. Which, don't get me wrong, it's a fun movie. But I imagine if you're someone who gets kind of like motion sickness, that you might find that movie a little jarring. In fact, I think if you have that same issue at all, I imagine this movie probably wouldn't be for you. But I feel like doing this movie this way really does, like, I feel like if executed properly, you would have something very exceptional, something that, much like the games themselves, people are going to inevitably remember for years to come. And that's, much like what Techland did with the Dying Light games in general. You're doing yourself a favor because you're actually standing out from everything else. Now, granted, these are just ideas. And that's why I consider these Let's Pitch videos moving forward. I'm going to consider these to be an open discussion kind of thing. So if you're someone who, maybe I sent the link of this video to you, or maybe you're just a stranger watching this, let me hear your thoughts. Like, who would you cast in the movie? Like, how would you go about doing it? What do you think about the idea? Do you think it's stupid? Like, do you think it's good? I mean, I'm not asking for a like and share and subscribe. Like, no. If you feel like you have something to this conversation that you can contribute, you're more than welcome to share your ideas. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just an exchange of ideas because nobody's ever going to do this. And if they do, I'll tell you what, I'll swallow my own foot. Because, goddamn. But, unless, hey, Techland, if you want somebody to help you make this movie, that's not going to happen. It'd be cool, but it wouldn't happen. Although you guys could, if you do want to take this idea, you guys can pay me with that zombie-proof bunker from that one special edition of the game that you guys tried to release back in 2015. We all know the one. I'll settle for the bunker. That'd be pretty cool. No. Anyway, I guess it's like, how would you cast? Like, who would you cast in the film as, and who would you cast as who? Who would you, how would you tell the story? Like, would you film it in POV or would you film it in third person? Like, how would you do it? I'm curious to know. Eventually as time moves on, I'll come back and I'll do this again for another movie idea or maybe even a video game idea or something like that. And we'll see, Hopefully this video does well, and if you liked what you saw, welcome. You're more than welcome to contribute to the conversation. I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts. But anyway, this is my idea for a Dying Light movie. And by the way, if in the case of if I were to do any of the sequels, or do a sequel or where, I would literally just do them in order of the video games. I don't know. I mean, granted, I feel like that's something you'd have to sit down and do for separate videos, but I would definitely do it in the order of, Dying Light, Dying Light 2, Stay Human, and Dying Light the Beast. I would love to do it that way. But, you know, that's how I would figure out how to probably even do the same thing without bringing back Roger Craig Smith as the voice of Kyle Crane. I don't remember what Aiden's voice actor's name was, but I would have him voice Aiden, you know? Like, and I feel like if, you know, you did Dying Light 2 and Dying Light the Beast, I feel like those movies would be possible, but you'd be sacrificing some degree of horror in exchange for amping up the action. And I mean, I feel like with certain sections of Dying Light 2 and good portions of Dying Light the Beast, I feel like there's definitely some action there that would be pretty sweet. And again, that hardcore Henry influence would really come in pretty handy at that point, methinks. But anyway, if you've made it this far and put up with my mindless ramblings and incoherent ideas, I appreciate you watching. Hope you all have a wonderful week. Enjoy the sun, depending on where you are. Stay cool, depending on where you are. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. So, yeah, this is my thoughts for a Dying Light movie. So, thank you for watching.